get when you gather 3 neuroscientists and ask questions about the most pressing topics of today? We're about to find out on The Futurist, the brain-computer interfaces episode. Let's meet our contestants. A neuroscientist at the University of Pennsylvania studying the neurobiological mechanisms of pain, Lindsay Edjo. Chief Medical Officer of Neuromodulation at Medtronic, Dr. Ash Sharan. And neuroscientist with over 700,000 TikTok followers, Ben Ryan. Let's get started.
Don't forget, whoever wins gets the $1 million prize.
Ooh, that's
I will fight for this. A brain-computer interface, or BCI, is a technology that lets you interact with devices like computers or robotic limbs using signals from your brain.
This link between mind and machine can be used to study, augment, or restore the brain, and is used as a treatment for chronic pain and movement disorders.
In the future, we expect to increasingly see BCIs being used to overcome disability, drive vehicles, interact in virtual worlds, and much, much more.
Pivot.
Keep that wiggle.
The wiggle is crazy.
Yeah, the wiggle.
Nice.
Nice.
Got it.
What's one way that BCIs are being used in healthcare today?
BCI 1.0, in my definition, or maybe in a broad definition, is deep brain stimulation. We're putting electrodes inside the brain, and we can sense the signal activity of the brain and even adjust the stimulation parameters of the brain. So we're able to control tremor and rigidity of movement.
All right. I think I'm going to even it out and target this piece right here.
Ooh.
Just go for it. Just go for it.
Did something happen on the other side?
No,
You just surprised us.
it just was loud.
What's a current misconception about BCIs?
I think the biggest misconception about BCIs that I see in the public, because I spend a lot of time on social media and seeing what people are talking about, is that BCIs are new. I think people think, they're just being developed now, that the first ever human with an implant just happened or recently. But there are studies from the 60s where they have monkeys controlling computers with their brain, using the exact same sort of technology, an implanted electrode. So it's a very well-established and thoroughly investigated field of research in the sort of academic context. But only now are we reaching a stage where, or only recently, I suppose, are we reaching a stage where it can be really widely implemented and be reaching people and helping a lot of people. What are you thinking?
Ooh, go low.
Not that.
Try the chop.
The chop would work in there.
Yeah.
Sabotage.
There you go. Can neurostimulation be used to treat pain?
Right now, there are a lot of patients that have electrodes implanted in their spinal cord or a group of touch and pain-sensing neurons that are right next to the spinal cord called the DRG, and those send electrical pulses to those neurons in order to help relieve their pain.
Receive a brain implant for the purposes of recreational use, like texting, or do you see it as something that's reserved only for sort of last resort invasive method?
So the trick, Ben, is making sure that you like your surgeon and you know that the surgeon can do a great job. But if the surgeon can do it, yeah, I'm doing it for recreation. I think the funny, interesting story is let's say it's making your children smarter. Now, are you willing to let your kids fall behind?
Right.
And will you let your child have the surgery? That's a little bit more touchy.
Yeah, that's where things get really dicey.
You better love your surgeon.
Okay, we're gonna chop. The chopping is so reliable. I busted out the karate chop, which helped a lot. I was trying to maintain the bottom to myself.
Ben really had the best technique. There's something in that little karate chop of his, and I tried to copy it.
Oh, you got it. You have a unique method of ordering food at restaurants. Tell us about it.
When I go to a restaurant, I'll pick out anywhere from 3 to 5 or 6 options that I'm interested in, and then I will ask the server to surprise me. And it's pleasant because, for me at least, I like the surprise. I like the novelty, and there's research showing that surprise and novelty increase memory of experiences. So perhaps I'm more likely to remember my experience at the restaurant by going with something random.
Can BCIs be used to increase your empathy or character traits?
In order for a brain-computer interface to enhance empathy, it would need to have stimulation capabilities because you would have to implant it in brain areas that are involved in empathy and stimulate those areas to hopefully elicit empathy. There's also the context of, can BCIs be used to express empathy for someone who may not be able to convey that, who may have restricted, motor control or language capabilities. And so you could detect a empathy resembling brain signal and have that be voiced through some computer, which is also an interesting idea. But I will say that for us to reliably evoke empathy with an implanted electrode, by just stimulating the right neurons to get a person to really share another person's perspective, may be a bit of a challenge. You probably need a lot of resolution to activate maybe specific populations or groups of neurons. There's also a bit of a ethical dilemma there and a conversation to be had about whether a brain-machine interface, a brain-computer interface should be used or is appropriate to be used for someone who requires the enhancement of empathy. Perhaps it would only be used in a setting where they have some deficit in empathy and they're searching for some way to enhance it.
Is it ethical for anyone to get it?
Right.
This mind control aspect. Even though technically many drugs we take do change our brains and change the ways our minds works, but
yeah,
then it's manipulating particular character traits. First of all, it's a little dicey there.
It is, yeah, because it's something, if you look at something like depression, if you suffer from depression, you probably nobody is being told to take an SSRI or something like that for depression. They're seeking it out themselves. When you have a deficit in something like empathy, are you seeking it out yourself? Is that person going to be seeking out a treatment, or is this going to become more of a, for society, it's better if this person can experience empathy because it may make them dangerous if they can't experience empathy, That's where it gets really, really dicey. And I'm with you that nobody should be given anything that they don't want, because I'm sure there are people out there who maybe want to enhance their empathy, and as of right now, there are really no options for something like that.
Why go for the easy move, though? Ooh. No, not that.
Oh.
You find such easy ones. Nice. How does pain work within the brain?
So what happens is that we have specialized pain neurons that have endings in our skin that can sense pain information coming from the external environment. We also have these same kind of pain sensors within our bodies to sense pain in our internal organs. For example, abdominal pain. So this pain information travels through nerves, through the spinal cord, and up to the brain for further processing. What's really cool is that our perception of pain isn't only dependent on what we get from our environment or within our body. There's also this top-down approach to pain, where things like the amount of tension you're paying to pain, the expectation of pain, trust in your provider, different things like that can affect the amount of pain that you're perceiving.
Not as straightforward as I thought.
Oh.
It can be.
This is a rough one.
This one. Oh, there's a hole in the middle.
Ooh,
You can see through that.
there
Nice.
you go.
The magician.
How can BCIs change the treatment for neurological diseases?
A patient can't always tell you what they're perceiving, and it makes it really difficult as a caregiver to understand what is the impact in terms of pain, anxiety, and emotional distress or suffering. So I think in generation 3.0 of BCI, we're going to be able to understand actually the stressors inside the body. So fundamentally, the idea of brain-computer interface, if you're putting wires on the brain, then you can detect how the brain is reacting.
Well, I suffer from chronic pain as well. I have chronic abdominal pain and chronic shoulder pain. So it would be awesome to have pain relief from some sort of BCI technology. I would also really, really love BCI for car sickness. I get car sick every time I'm in a car and I'm not driving. So it would be awesome for me to be able to go on road trips without feeling sick. Okay.
What do you think is the future of pain relief?
I think in order for us to solve the problem of 1 in 5 million Americans living with chronic pain at some point in their lifetime, one really good way to start is to find a reliable pain signature in the brain. What does pain actually look like? How is it represented in the brain? And that's gonna help us, be able to better diagnose it. 2 is finding drugs or other therapeutics that have less side effects. Right now, a lot of patients with chronic pain take opioid drugs, which have a lot of side effects, as you may know, and is contributing to the ongoing opioid epidemic. Another thing that's important for the future of pain relief is, just increasing accessibility of these pain treatments, making them more accessible for people that are in underserved populations, and decreasing bias in the clinic when patients talk about their pain. Because many times patients describe their pain to clinicians and it's not always properly conveyed or not always received very well by their clinicians, which the research shows doesn't help with their ultimate treatment of their pain.
Ooh, ooh.
Oh.
Keep it up.
He's
Can I
got to
just
go
leave it
for
there?
it.
Smart.
Smart.
That's right. Thank you. Well, thank you.
How is technology listening and responding to the brain?
Electronics has really gotten very sophisticated. And so we can both put large metal contacts as antennas. We can put micro wires inside the brain. And that information can either Bluetooth or direct link out of the brain where it can be interpreted by a computer. So there's a lot of amplifiers. And then there's one other part of this, which is noise reduction, because there's so much artifact, not only from the environment and all the signals, but even inside the body. If you think about EKG signals, the gut signals, each one of these things causes noise. So it's a combination of the ability to make smaller and smaller transistors and wires, better amplifiers, and then finally, noise reduction. So that's the technology.
Did it just come out? What just happened?
It came out.
Nothing horrible.
Another one moved. Came out. That's what matters. How are BCIs helping people?
BCIs are helping people by essentially taking the information that's stored and kind of held captive in the cranium, in the brain, and allowing it to power systems that can sort of step in where other biological systems are failing or not working properly. So for example, if someone has a movement condition, a movement disorder where they're having trouble moving, or maybe they've lost a limb or multiple limbs, or if they have an inability to speak. So you have a brain that is sending these signals, it's saying move this or say this, but the sort of output systems are not functioning properly. It can capture and detect that information in the brain and use it to power another system that kind of gets around any sort of deficit that may be hindering them and hindering their ability. So it helps people regain functions that they may have lost, and that could be a variety of functions.
So like restoring that brain-body connection that had been lost?
Yeah, when the brain system that controls a body system is working, the brain's working, but the body system's not working properly, a BCI can step in and take over for that body system using the natural language of the brain and the way that it's trying to control that body system. Good?
I'm so scared.
Oh, hi.
Oh, you're good.
Just picture the cinematic music they're gonna add to that.
Getting taller than me.
How can we build responsible ethics into the world of BCIs?
First, through consent. Every single BCI that should be implanted should be fully consented to by the individual being experimented on or being helped. Second is accessibility. I don't want there to be a future where only people who have the money or only people who have been born into the right family have access to this kind of life-saving technology. This is the kind of thing that, even though it will be expensive practically, I believe should genuinely be accessible for anyone who needs it, regardless of where you come from or how much money you make. And another way to make BCIs more ethical in the future is by making the most safest and minimally invasive technologies that we can, so that we can mitigate the risks and side effects associated with BCIs.
So Lindsay, I 100% agree with the consent component. When you're talking, it made me think about the application of like someone in a coma or something like that. Like, what if we could implant an electrode to detect language and like input language and have conversations? Something I'd never thought about before, but that would have to be done without consent.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on how deep the person is in a coma, because the deeper you go, the less responsive and active that the brain is in these different language processing centers. A similar way that we consent to giving our organs after we die, and a similar way we would consent to be revived in the clinic when somebody stops breathing or their heart stops beating. Maybe we can have this consent systems in place where if they're not in the position to consent in the moment for a life-saving BCI technology, the doctors know in advance that this person does want that for themselves.
I feel like everything's sort of connected to each other now.
I just realized what would be the easiest piece, but I'm not gonna give it to you.
You want it yourself.
It's for me, yeah.
Honestly, I think my biggest competition was Ben, even though at the same time he was giving us all advice on how we should play the game. He had a lot of good ideas, and he seemed to know which ones would be loose. like without even looking at them or without even touching them.
He really has a presence about him and a sophistication. So I felt like he had done this before. Thank you. That was great.
Such a gentle
And
job.
please put it on top on this side quickly.
I enjoyed that.
What role will BCIs play in human health?
I think BCI is the next frontier. I think everybody's familiar with the EKG and that we can monitor your heart. And of course, when the heart's under strain, it's the predictive value of doing something proactive is high. And if you think about BCIs now as a tool that is also understanding your mind, and that's called EEG. So you need those internal sensors. There's no doubt, and I'm not trying to be an alarmist, there's a big threat of Alzheimer's. And as your memory gets weak, and most people discover it after the memory is weak. So the what if, or imagine this, is what if we could predict that something's happening to your memory? Could you rehabilitate it, do more exercise, eat the right foods, take the right medications? So I think BCI is going to play a role there.
What does that look like? Yearly brain scans to make sure that someone's brain activity is properly functioning at that time?
I think it's actually having a small internal sensor that's 24/7. Because you change every day. You might have a slow day, right?
Yeah.
You were too exhausted, too stressed, something changed it. So one day doesn't change your trajectory of memory decline. But on the cumulative, there's an average where you should be. And how about if that starts trending down?
I see.
So I think it has to be a continuous monitor.
My initial response
Yeah.
was to challenge that by saying, does it need to be implanted? Can it be external? But I do like your point of it being constant, right? Constant monitoring, which obviously gives you greater resolution on a day-to-day too. Like, oh, after I did this, my brain function just plummeted. I would imagine it'd be difficult to get people to, every day spend 20 minutes in the sensor.
Unless it could be built into your pillow or something where it's a controlled environment, right? I mean, most people, you don't want to take your day with you every day to sleep, but maybe that's more constant.
Yeah.
So there are some alternatives. Everybody doesn't need an implant.
I recently learned that this company exists that's making EEG-enabled headphones. And so their concept is that you wear the headphones while you're doing work, and it measures frontal alpha beta signals, so a measure of focus, and so it'll tell you, hey, your focus is declining, maybe take a break. That kind of idea of just embedding brain sensors into daily activities.
Do you guys both know that they're actually, for truck drivers, they're looking at that alpha beta ratio to see when that's drifting, or to the theta, so when you're drifting down to sleep.
Right. And there's some data showing that it's like extremely predictive of crashes, right?
It's a great question, right? Because should you be allowed to do those night hauls when there's absolutely risks?
And sometimes there's pressure because you're trying to get this product to the location. But if you have brain data showing, I am not physically able to do this and it's unsafe for me, then maybe those people can have those, more flexibility in taking that nap without being punished or affecting their jobs. Okay, I'm gonna get on the ground. If this falls on me, am I gonna be injured?
We'll save you.
We have a doctor in the room, so. Slow.
That was concerning.
Slow.
What ethics should be considered when developing BCIs for healthcare?
We spoke a little bit about the consenting process, but what exactly is cognitive liberty and who should control your thoughts? So it's not just the freedom of living, it's the freedom of thinking. These are, I think, the questions that we as a society have to struggle with. Because once we can actually start interpreting the mind for the goodness of your body, who's going to control that data and when's that data going to be destroyed? So I don't know if we have the answers right now. The fact that data can exist and reproduce so easily and go viral is concerning. But I think we need to now, before it gets out of control, have these conversations and create boundaries.
Oh, wow.
You're toast, Lindsay. There's no way. The way the rotation goes, Lindsay always gets that perfect one.
Yeah.
Because the top gets completed. Nice.
One more row and I won't be able to reach
it's gonna
it.
get a little too tall.
Okay.
We came, we played, we learned about the amazing connection between technology and the brain. Thanks for joining us on this episode of The Futurist, brought to you by Medtronic. See you next time.